Hello, everybody. My name is Hedi Shah, for those of you who are new to my space. I teach change makers to uncondition their bodies, their nervous systems, and their voices from systems built to keep them small, so they can stand, speak, and move through life with sovereign power. What I'm about to teach you today about posture is not a bunch of yoga poses or stretches. It's not a quick fix way of looking at posture. It's actually something that completely transformed my life and the way I teach movement these days. And I'm really excited to share all my learning in the next 4 weeks, starting today. For those of you who've been here in the 3-day mini posture bootcamp back in March, some of the information will be the same for today's workshop. But after that, we will be focusing a lot more on the exercise portion of the sessions. But I will make sure that I will cover something at the beginning of each session that we can understand intellectually while we're doing this. Because when we understand the deeper why, then when we get into the exercises, we can tap into that a little bit deeper. Most people think in order to have a good posture, we need to have the shoulder blades back, chest up, and move through life robotically long enough until suddenly our posture has transformed and we can walk straight all the time. But the truth is, an optimal posture, a good posture, is not a rigid posture. It's a relaxed posture. We're aiming for a relaxed posture at the end of the day as we're going through our day-to-day activities. There are ways that we can create activation in the system to be able to maintain better posture or optimal posture as we go through our life. So I want to see, put in the chat your number of any of these posture. Like personally, I was number 2. So the number 1 posture is the optimal posture, or you will hear me talk about it, the stacked posture. So where our diaphragm and our pelvic floor communicate effectively, we have a very stable core, we can move around effortlessly. But all the other ways are the ways that we're moving away from that optimal posture. So I want to know in the chat, which one do you associate with? Amy, number 4, 3 or 4? Yeah? 3. Hi, Sarah. Number 4. Okay. 4 or maybe 5. 4, 4, 5. Okay. So before we get into the session, and I'm sure this question will pop up towards the end of the session when we're doing the exercises as well, because when I share my own experience is very much 2 and 3. So then people will say, oh, like how about 4 or 5? Are these exercises effective for like all categories? So the way I designed the exercise portion of all of these sessions are the fundamentals, the things that both the spectrum of flexion and extension would benefit from. And if there is modification needed, I will cue that accordingly depending on what posture you're identifying with. So keep that in mind. My personal journey, this is where I listen to all the mainstream posture gurus out there telling me to pull the shoulder blades back, chest up, and that's an effective posture to move around. And this was when I felt like my body was literally falling apart after a car accident that I had back in 2018. And I did all the things like chiros, physios, and all the traditional way of taking care of your bodies when you have injuries, and none of them worked out. And at this time, I was 5 years into personal training and active rehab space in my own career, and all the things that I learned wasn't really working for me. And I was becoming more and more frustrated, and the amount of pain that I was in around my upper back and shoulders and lower back and also right foot was ridiculous. And every time I tried to move my body or exercise in any way that I did in the past, I would have severe flare-ups. Around this time, I got introduced to the whole nervous system world space, practices like craniosacral therapy, PDTR, tonal chiropractic, and a lot of those modalities that really look at the nervous system a lot deeper. And those practices allowed me to create like a little bit of a gap in my system to be able to feel more resourced to go through my life and find better solutions. But still, every time I worked out, I would be in a lot of pain. And that was when I got introduced to what I'm about to teach to you today and for the next few weeks. The second photo is when I started prioritizing restoring my posture, looking at my breathing on the fundamental level, and then restoring my core and being able to open up space in areas that I didn't breathe into before. So as you can see, my posture is still pretty relaxed and upright by so many standards, probably in a better position than before, but I had a lot less pain and discomfort. So that's why I really have a lot of problem, and one of my pet peeves are how we're generalizing a lot of narratives around what a good posture is, because people, especially like me, a lot of people would not benefit from overextending anything, because overextension creates a lot of stress in the system. And we want to find what is more relaxed in our system. And then the third photo is when I finally managed to get back on the strength training and being able to build a lot more muscle mass. Posture is not limited to your neck and shoulders. If you go back to the original photo that I shared here, even though you might only see the neck or your shoulders or your lower back, it's how we're communicating from the ground up. We're constantly fighting gravity. And the way we're orienting ourselves in this space and communicate with the gravity defines how optimal our posture is. If you see in this photo, my left was orienting towards the right, and then I was loading a lot of pressure on the right. No wonder that I had a lot of stuff constantly going on the right side of my body. And in the second photo, you see how I'm stabilizing myself a lot better on both sides. One thing that I also want to share is we're not looking at fully balanced, symmetrical bodies, because by nature, we are asymmetrical. And the reason for that is because we have the heart on the left and the other side of our ribcage is empty. And that creates asymmetry in our system because of the way we breathe left to right. So the way we breathe is very different on the left side than the right side. And we need that for that harmonious left and right movement. But the problem starts when if an injury happens or a pain or a tension happens, then that asymmetry becomes very extreme, that is no longer supportive. If you're looking at these series of photos, I love the analogy of a coil. The first photo is a resting posture. When we're looking at a coil that is resting, it's ready to extend and ready to flex. And we need both of them as we're going through life. I know in this day and age, like flexion has been demonized because a lot of us, due to the different factors, are very stuck in this position. That's why we feel like being in flexion is very wrong, but we actually need that for our day-to-day life to be able to do that. But the problem is when we get stuck in one or the other. For example, in the example of 2 and 3, so we are more in extension. So the second one is a lot in extension. The third one is mainly through the rib cage stuck in extension. On the fourth one, the upper body is stuck in flexion, but lower body on the pelvic floor is stuck in extension. And then the fifth one, we're completely flexed. So when we get stuck on either of these, we want to introduce a more neutral, or like teaching the brain to find that center again. And we won't be able to do that until we actually talk about the diaphragm and pelvic floor. So we need both of them to be able to restore our posture. So before we get into that, make sure that you've got all these set up. I know I forgot to put wall space on there, so make sure that you've got you have a space that you can put your wall on when you're lying down. So I'm going to give about 2 minutes for you to set up. And I know so many of us tend to consume a lot of information, but I encourage you to get involved, move with us, and really start experimenting with your body and what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And also I want to emphasize that I don't see you. I don't know what's going on with your body. Honor where your body is at. If something doesn't feel good, get curious, either modify. I try my best to modify some of the exercises, but if something doesn't feel good, then trust your instinct. We're going to cover the breathing first. We want to learn how to breathe through the diaphragm. For those of you who are, like so many of us are in the habit of shallow breathing. And then also there are another group of people that got into the habit of belly breathing because we've been told that belly breathing is better. So belly breathing has its own benefit, but for an optimal posture, we actually need the diaphragm and the pelvic to work together. And in order for that to happen, the diaphragm needs to expand 360 degrees. So we're going to do an assessment first. Have the index finger in the front of the diaphragm and your thumbs in the back. So now you're going to start with soft breathing. We're not looking at deep breathing. Actually, let's digress. So let's cover the breathing, like the inhale first, and then we're going to do the assessment. So many of us are in the habit of deep breathing. When I try to deep breathe, I'm actually getting a lot of muscles of the neck and the shoulders engaged in the deep breathing mechanics. But for this particular work, we want to learn how to soft breathe. So a breath that is not activating anything on the upper body. So let's test it out. Let's maybe take a moment and start by softly inhaling. Nice, relax, exhale out. Let's keep that going. Soft inhale. Nice, relax, exhale out. So if there's any sound to your inhale, can you breathe on the next inhale in a way that there's no sound? Obviously, because I'm excited, it's going to be really hard for me now to take a soft breath in. But I can do my best to really slow down my breath and allow that breath breathe me instead of me trying to breathe. We want to take the trying out of our breathing. So let's keep that going. Soft inhale. Nice, relax, exhale out. If you're in the habit of expanding your belly, see how would the breath change if you didn't overexpand your belly. And as we continue for 2 more rounds of soft inhale here, see if there is any work being done on the shoulders and the neck. Soften that out. Relax that. Relax, exhale out. 1 more round of inhale here. Relax, exhale out. So now I want to know in the chat, how did that feel? Maybe put a 1 in the chat if you felt like you could actually expand more of your rib cage. I've got this a lot, like it felt weird. If it felt weird, put a 2 in the chat. If there was anything that I didn't mention, you can type it in the chat. Yeah, it was hard for me to have enough air for an exhale, so the chest expands. Especially if you're associating with rounded shoulder and forward head posture, getting that expansion in the chest is common reflection after doing these practices. Because we want to get that, so we get that 360 degree expansion. So for someone like me, I got a lot of pulled back, so I would need to get a lot more in the back. So now we're going for the assessment. So index finger in the front, thumbs in the back. So start by soft inhale. And I want you to feel that expansion in the front, in the back, to the side. We want that 360 degree expansion of our diaphragm. You can even soften your gaze or close your eyes and see if there is any expansion going on there. So you might feel like, for example, in my case, I had a very difficult time getting expansion in the back rib. For some of you, it might be harder to get the front. For some of you, the left side only. Continue with the same rhythm of that soft inhale. And every time, as if you're creating that connection with the brain, can you get your brain to move that part of the ribcage that hasn't been moved in a very long time? Good. Keep that going. We're here for 2 more rounds of experimentation, and we want to see if we can get things moving. For so many, things are starting to move. For some, that doesn't happen. So it needs specific exercises for those areas to actually open up. Okay, so put a 1 in the chat if you got things moving in the ribcage. Now we're transitioning to an inverted breathing position. This can be beneficial for both the spectrum of extension and flexion. So I'll show you the movement. You can watch me first and then get into the position. We're going to go down. Palms are facing up. So think about that you're about to dive forward. Okay? So you get into that position, the back of the hands down. So push the ground away from you. If you have a lot of extension in the spine and you know that, so then tuck that pelvis under you. If you don't know that, then keep it like in the relaxed position, however that you got into that position. So don't overthink it. So now we're going to push the elbow, especially the inner part of the elbow, down into the ground. And because of the pressure I'm creating downward, my shoulder blades are moving to the side. So I create an open back. The gravity is pulling the front of my chest down. So it creates that openness in the front of the chest at the same time. So we are creating that back expansion, and simultaneously the gravity is taking care of the front expansion. So you're going to push the ground away from you. What I don't want to see is like this. So you're carrying a lot of tension and feeling your shoulder blades are squeezing together. So we're going to push the ground away from you. Eyes are on the fingers without the head lifting up. So I want you to think about there's a length being created along the rest of your spine. So eyes on the fingers, get into that position. So now we're going to play with the breath. Soft inhale again, breathing in. Now we're going for long exhale out. So you're blowing into an imaginary birthday balloon or you're sighing it out. Okay? So you can test with both and see which one give you more contraction in your core. So soft inhale again. So blow into that birthday balloon or sigh it out. So we're aiming for about 8 seconds long. If that's too long for you, then find a threshold that is accessible to you so you can play with that. And later you can work on increasing that length. We don't want to round. We don't want to get into any form of cat position. Everything is pretty neutral. Okay? We don't want to reduce or lose the length of the spine. We're here for 5 rounds of breath. The back of the hands down, pushing the ground away from you. Soft inhale. Nice long exhale out. When everything is coming down and in, you feel this hug in your low ribs. Let that stay down. Feel that contraction as you're going for the next inhale. Full exhale out. Keep everything nicely down. Don't lose that contraction that you created through your exhale. If you don't feel that contraction, that's okay. It takes time. But if you do feel it, work with it. Keep it down as you go for the next inhale. Full exhale out. One last breath here. Soft inhale. Full exhale out. And you can relax. So before we transition to the next exercise, I want to cover the exhale a little bit better because we want to continuously play with the edge of our exhale, because when we're exhaling, we create that contraction, especially around our side abs, and that's what we need. So many of us don't have an ability to get the side abs doing what they're supposed to do to create that stability in our system. So we talked about the soft inhale. On the exhale, so we want to imagine you have two options. Different people are different. That's why I introduced both options. For some of you that you feel like long exhale, blowing, imagining that you're blowing into a birthday balloon. The goal is to build enough stamina to be able to get that 8 seconds long exhale going. So the first version is blowing into a birthday balloon. Soft inhale. The second option is exhaling through the back of your throat, like this. And getting things engaging. So when we get the things engaged, if you start noticing that, you start feeling that, so keep them down. So what happens is, when we keep them down, the breath is not going into the belly. So the breath needs to take the path of least resistance, which is expanding the rib cage. Do we squeeze the diaphragm or the abs? No, we're not squeezing anything. So the breath is taking care of this. One of the things that I see a lot around my clients, especially when you understand the mechanics, you start over exaggerating it, or you go into almost a crunch position. So if anything, all these exercises that I'm teaching is regaining length back in the spine. So if we go back to the photos here, you see how the first position, the spine is a lot longer than the rest because we've got that worked out. But if I crunch or if I squeeze something, then we're losing that length. On the out breath, no, still we don't want to squeeze anything. Do you mean squeeze like in the form of like crunching, or is it to squeeze because you exhale, things are integrating? If you feel integration happening, that is encouraged, but we don't want to feel any sense of like overworking. It's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging to maintain that stability in the core throughout, but it shouldn't feel like you're putting a lot of effort into it. I hope that clarified it, Laura. Please let me know if that's not clarified. Put a 1 in the chat if you've got a foam roller lying around. If you don't have a foam roller, oh, I don't have a blanket here, so I normally do. But like roll out a blanket in the foam roller shape. Let me show you. Like I don't have a blanket, but I've got my sweater. That's not ideal, but I just want to show you what you can do. So you're gonna fold it and then roll it like this, so you can mimic a foam roller. Yeah, a towel could work 100%. We're going into a 90-90 position. So feet on the wall. The reason we're putting the feet on the wall is we want to mimic the floor. And we're constantly fighting against gravity, right? And we need that connection through the feet to be able to create this whole chain effect in the posture. And that's why we play a lot with the wall in our sessions. So for those of you who have a ponytail, make sure it's not creating a lot of like change in your head position. Like the way I had my ponytail, it would affect how I was breathing. So make sure that you're opening it or tie it over top of your head, so that's not impacting your position, the position of the neck. So we're gonna have the foam roller between the legs like this. So look at your feet, make sure they're parallel to one another. I can guarantee that so many of you feel the outer edge of your feet more than the inner edge of your feet. Bring your awareness and your sensation to the inner part of your heels. And then from here, we're gonna take 2 breaths like we talked about. Soft inhale, get that 360-degree expansion of the diaphragm. And then blow. When everything comes down and in and integrate, we go for the next inhale. Ideally, don't lose the contraction that you created. Now we're adding our hamstring to the mix. So you start digging the heels down towards the ground. The feet are not moving. So the feet are right there, and you start digging the heels down. And when you start feeling the hamstring closer to the knees, you're going to tuck that pelvis under you. And you're going to start feeling more of the hamstring closer to the bum. So if you don't feel your hamstring, so then maybe you could push yourself slightly further away to get more of your hamstring. If that doesn't give you the hamstring still, then we got more work to do. So it's not going to fit into today's session. So what you can do is continue playing with what you can feel, or use your imagination to get that feeling going, okay? So now, when you're tucking that pelvis under you, if you don't know what it means to tuck your pelvis under you, think about how you're over-exaggerating your lower back, arching your lower back. We want to go the exact opposite. But when we're tucking the pelvis under, we don't want to squeeze the bum. We want to keep the bum actually being really relaxed, and only the pelvis is doing the tucking. Stay right there, and we're here for 3 rounds of breath. So we're really neutralizing our posture here. For those of you who know that you have a rounded shoulder and a lot of stuff going on the forward head posture, so have your elbows pushed down into the ground. Elbows pushed down to the ground like this. So not a lot of push that you're going into extension. Just enough push that you feel like the front of your chest is opening up just a little bit, okay? And for those of you who don't associate with forward head posture or rounded shoulder, have the arms reaching forward. So now we're softly inhaling again. Full exhale out. We're here for 3 to 5 rounds of breath. We're going to continue feeling the hamstring, feeling the inner part of the feet and the outer part of the feet on the wall. Soft inhale, nice long exhale out. A reminder, when we exhale and everything integrates, so we keep them integrated as we're going through the next inhale. For those of you who have your chin too far tucked in, relax that. Maybe your chin lifts gently towards the ceiling. So we want to keep that airways nice and open so we can actually breathe. One last breath here. Full exhale out. We are not coming out of this position because there is an exercise that we go straight into after this, and we need this position for it. But you can let go and relax. Ideally, don't move around too much. Just to stay in your position so you don't have to reset it up each time too much. But relax the hamstring, relax the arms. We're not breathing right now. Like, obviously you're breathing, but not with the mechanics of what we practiced so far. Just return to normal breath. Please don't hold your breath. Okay, now, for those of you who've got a foam roller, this is going to be a little bit easier. But for those of you who've got a blanket or a towel, you can still mimic this, but it's going to be a little bit of a different experience. So the mechanics is we're digging the heels down. Again, tuck that pelvis under us. Again, arms are staying nice and relaxed. We want to floss the pelvis. And the idea is our pelvis is supposed to move in all directions, separate from the spine. The spine and the core stabilizes us, and the pelvis moves, okay? So we want to make sure that the spine or the lower back here is not going into any form of extension or overarching. That's why we're maintaining that tuck under us throughout the session. And imagine there are strings attached to your knees, and it's pulling them up one at a time. Okay, so it's a really small movement. The compensation that I often see happening is people start lifting their feet off the ground. The feet remains on the wall throughout. So there's no point of this exercise that we're lifting the feet off the floor, okay? So now I start with my right knee. So my right knee gently move up, and then naturally the left knee drops down. And then now the left knee goes up, and naturally the right knee drops down. So this is what we're supposed to be doing when we're walking. But so many of us have lost that range of motion or that ability to feel free in our pelvis. So make it really small and really gentle. So you want to imagine that you're rubbing against the foam roller or rubbing against that towel one at a time. So you're feeling it in your inner thighs as well. So making sure that the feet remains parallel throughout this exercise. So we're keeping this nice and soft. And every rep, you're exploring to see if there is a little bit more room to go a little bit further back. So what's happening is our femur, our upper bone in our upper leg is pushing down into our hip socket and forces our pelvis to shift. So keep it nice and soft. You shouldn't lose that tuck in the pelvis, because when we are losing the tuck in the pelvis, we are using our spine instead of getting the movement of the pelvis through our feet and our leg. So keep that nice and tucked. For some of you, this might feel like so softening and so beautiful, but you shouldn't feel any pain. If there's any ickiness on either side, so you're going to pause in that position before going into too much pain. You don't want to actually go into any pain whatsoever. But if there's limitation, pause right there and give yourself a nice long exhale out. And we keep that going. So we're here for a few more reps, and occasionally check yourself and make sure that you're still at the 90-degree position. So we're here for 2 more each side. Take your time. And you can relax. So we're going to go for the last exercise for today's session. I talked about this position number 1, right? Stacked body position, okay? If we look at the other positions, they're far from stacked. So the rib cage is not naturally land over the pelvis. The first exercise is like, how can we create length in the system or create that stacked body position if you are in either spectrum of flexion or extension? First, find your footing, knee nice and soft, and then imagine where my ponytail is. Imagine there's a string attached there, maybe a beard or the divine comes in and pulling you up towards the ceiling while you feel the weight of your body going downwards towards the ground. So my knees are nice and soft. I know so many people these days are hyperextended on the knees. So keep it nice and soft. Create that nice length upward. And then when you feel that like these like polar opposite forces, downward gravity, upward, now can you allow yourself to relax? One thing that is really important, I'm not lifting the chin. We're creating that nice length upward from the back of the head. So we're keeping everything nice and stacked. When you feel that length, now can you relax? Can you allow yourself to relax in that position? You're not working or overperforming to get more reach or to get more length. And can you allow yourself to relax in this position? This is a really good substitute for those of you who are pulling the shoulder blades back or chest up constantly. Now that we get to relax and explore this length, now the next exercise that I'm about to introduce is literally thinking about that we're walking and we're maintaining the same length, right? That's why we talk about overall structure of our posture today. So now, have one foot in the front, the other foot in the back, not a massive wide step. So keep it like equal to a normal step that you would take in your day-to-day life, okay? So one foot in the front, the other foot in the back. Let's all start on feet being equally flat on the ground. Maybe close your eyes for a second. Find that nice length in the spine and feel the weight of your body going downwards. And now imagine that you are about to take a step forward. So we're doing this in slow motion, okay? So what happens is I start transitioning my weight forward over my front foot. For those of you who feel like really light on the heel, make sure that the heel is nicely screwed in, but you feel the majority of the weight over the midfoot. And I can guarantee so many of you, your knees are hyperextended like this. So soften those knees. The knees, if I were to draw a line from the middle of my foot, come up, it would hit my knee, and then I would tuck that pelvis under, so it would cross my pelvis and then hit my rib cage and come all the way up to the top of my head. For those of you who have knee issues, this might be too much to begin with, so I would digress. So get a little bit heavier on the heel. You might not be ready yet to go over your midfoot. So really play with what your comfortable edge is here, okay? So when you settle, some of you, I know you're here because it's too scary to get stacked. It's too hard to get stacked because our foot is not trained to do that. So we can't really orient ourselves properly over our midfoot. That's something that in a healthy gait needs to naturally happen. This is a great exercise to really look at yourself at the screen or a mirror to really make sure that you're nice and stacked over one leg. So I'm not carrying a lot of weight on the back leg. I'm feeling a lot of pressure on the front foot. I might also feel a little bit on my calves, and that's okay too. So now, whatever leg that is in the front, have the opposite arm reaching forward. So a healthy gait, the opposite side of the body are doing different things. So soft inhale, nice long exhale out. The same mechanic that we played with. So we get that nice expansion of the diaphragm, full exhale out, and in this position you start feeling your side abs a little bit more. If this is too much for your shoulder and you have shoulder tension, just bring it a little bit lower down. Soft inhale, nice long exhale out. Let everything nicely integrated. We're here for one more breath. I know that front foot is cooking right now. One breath here, full exhale out. And we take almost two steps, one more step forward and completing that. So that was literally meeting ourselves halfway through our gait cycle. So to be able to train ourselves and carry ourselves as a whole forward. The other side, one foot in the front. Make sure you're not too wide on your stand. We start first having both of the feet nicely down. The weight is almost equally distributed between both legs. Find that nice length in the spine. Can you allow yourself to relax a little bit if you're tensing up? Especially like some people with these exercises tend to carry a lot of tension in their jaw. Can you soften the jaw? And also having your tongue resting on the roof of your mouth for these exercises can be also extremely supportive. Okay, now we are about to take our step and we're waiting halfway through, right? So you start distributing the weight forward on that front leg. Make sure the front knee is soft. So if you tend to have a very locked knee, so that tells me that the pelvis is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So make sure that you're softening the knee and tucking that pelvis under you a little bit more. So that is going to be a lot more supportive for you. And then we're going to go back, find that nice length, have the opposite arm reaching forward. Soft inhale, nice, relax, exhale out. So eyes are in the front. I know it's a lot of work if you've never done something like this before. So as much as it's a lot of work on the lower part of your foot, can you allow the rest of the body to remain nice and relaxed? And just really using your visualization that you're about to take the next step forward. Soft inhale, nice long exhale out. Get those side abs integrating. Feel those side abs. Make sure the heel is not lifted. The heel is nice and heavy, but we're loaded on that front leg. Again, if you have knee issues, that's really important that you're not pushing too far forward to the midfoot, because we need more development on the foot to be able to be ready to go full on over the midfoot. Now we're going to take another step forward. In other words, we transfer our weight over to the foot moving forward. Like, yeah, exactly. But so many of us don't do that. We overcompensate. Like sometimes, like I see that shift, like the pelvis flossing exercise that we've done. It's a really good exercise before a long walk, or if you go on a hike. That really set the tone for how the pelvis is moving. If you're going for a walk, for example, take a moment and make sure the rhythm is there. Like, what do I mean by that? If the left leg is in the front, have the right arm in the front. So then allow yourself to tap into that rhythm. That creates a lot of restoration in the posture as well. This is almost the end of today's session, but I'm open for question. If anybody has any question or needs any clarification on anything. I noticed my back knee started hurting a bit when I had it aligned straight. So we don't want anything straight. Are you referring to when we originally started distributing the weight equally, or when we were doing the exercises? Because when we are doing the exercises, we actually have the back leg completely relaxed and the knee nice and soft. It was like it was turning inward. So in a normal gait, or like at least in the scenario that I explained, it's actually really normal for the knee, the back knee, to come in a little bit. I know like a lot of modalities out there, they focus a lot on external rotation. And a lot of people nowadays are too much externally rotated, and we don't have enough internal rotation. While in the walking mechanics that we talked about, actually, a part of our gait cycle is for the hip to go inward and the knee also turns inward for that motion to happen effectively. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next. The next session is also on a Wednesday, and I see you all then. Take care of yourself, and thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.